Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I am your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend Jim Stam. How you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. T minus 20 some odd games to go. We complain, we bitch, we moan. It's going to be over soon. So, whatever you can find to enjoy out of it, do it because it's not going to be here much longer, Gary. It's
Yeah, about
September.
35 days from now, I'll be upset that there's no more baseball for me to watch every night.
Oh,
So,
it's crazy how that works. Like even us, we get, we hit these highs and lows and you're just over it and then all of a sudden it's over. So, you know.
yeah, I mean, and I saw a report come out from Jason Mackey, I guess, that he was 99% sure Andy Haynes will be back next season. Hey, he's got more connections than I do. So if he says that, okay. Um, Much like with the Steelers, I really wanted them to fire Matt Canada. They didn't. I'm still going to watch. Still going to talk about it if they end up keeping him. But Jim, I have almost never been so convinced it was a huge mistake. So I'm going to choose to not get mad about this until it's happened. But when we
Yeah.
know that it's happened, I think you and I are going to spend a good long time going off on that in the off season.
Yeah, I saw that the 99 sticks out to you, obviously. I saw it today. It, I didn't I didn't have a huge reaction to it because I just know a lot of things can happen. I know once the dust settles on the season, things happen sometimes.
Sure.
We'll see where it all falls. You made a great point with the Matt Canada thing with the Steelers. Now the Steelers have a little bit more leeway in the decision-making department for us to be patient about. But hey, we'll see how that's going to work out too. So I don't know. We'll see. A lot can happen.
Yeah. I mean, all I can really say is, you know, Jason and I didn't agree on how the Brian Reynolds situation would turn out either. And if I
Listen,
recall, he was pretty high up there on his estimation for how likely it was he was going to get traded. So things
yeah,
do change.
it, in information, they
It's
get
only
good
as good as
info.
who's
Jay,
telling you it.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Is like, I mean, do people want to tell you what's really going on? I don't know. Jason's very good at his job. A lot of,
Very.
and people are well sourced. But hey, we've seen it all the time. Beat writers and things of that nature. That's never going to happen. This guy's never going to get cut. This guy's, and then turns around and it happens. So everybody's human. We'll see how it works out.
Absolutely, man. I mean, you also never even know, like, when a team is trying to float a trial balloon. Maybe they want to see just how big the explosion might be if they do decide to do something that they
Y-
know is unpopular already. Any of that could be true. So let's see
yes.
before we choose to get real mad about it and waste a whole episode talking about it. Let's wait until we know for sure it's there. But something that people are getting needlessly mad about probably is all of the cuts from the Angels that went unclaimed by your Pittsburgh Pirates.
Hmm.
People were losing their minds about this, Jim. I never for about 5 seconds thought that they were going to take any of these guys. And really for the simple fact that it wouldn't really do them any good right now. You're talking about like two or three starts at this point if you were to take a starter like that. I actually think they've kind of gotten it stabilized enough that I'm not even that worried about it right now with Jackson and Bailey Falter. Kind of feels like they're at least competent enough to get through the season in that regard. But I don't think it's about money. I think it certainly doesn't really help you with like any kind of next year contract stuff. That's what I kept hearing. Oh, well, get Giolito in here and start talking to him about a contract. That's not how it works. He's not going to get traded here from his last trade, mind you, and he's struggling. Come in here and then you want him to what? Pitch for you, or do you want him to sit down and talk to you? Because most of them don't like talking during the season. And I'm going to go ahead and guess you actually do more to tick him off by keeping him from a playoff opportunity than you would gain any kind of traction on extending him.
I think when you think it all through, um, you know, there's not a lot to gain from the player side of it. Um, and I don't see that there is a huge gain for the Pirates. I lend zero credence to the whole get him in here and maybe he'll re-sign and whatever. Look, if he comes in here and pitches well for a few starts, he's going to use that to his advantage with anybody and everybody that he possibly can, including the Pirates.
Yeah.
Like, he won't have any. He's not going to have any
Affinity for us, no.
loyalties to the Pirates. It's going to be used as a springboard, if nothing else. I I didn't see it as anything to get worked up about. I know people do. Um, I don't think it was about the money aspect of it. And you're right, it probably would tick somebody off if they thought they might be going to a team that's in the race. I hate the practice in general. I don't like dumping players, and it can affect pennant races when you've played 140 some games. I don't like the practice. I think it sucks. But that they that they didn't do it here in Pittsburgh, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me either. I think they're kind of starting to do okay. I mean, their last 40 games here, 500. You know,
Now
and
they're gonna have to they're
when
gonna
you
have to
really
face the Braves and the Brewers coming up, and look, they're gonna get tested anyway. But yeah, it's gone better than I thought it would. Quite honestly, I thought it would
sure,
be
it's
really,
gone
really
better than it
ugly.
had any business going.
Yeah.
No starting rotation, and Jack Sawinski like completely in the tank pretty much. So yeah, it absolutely has gone better than it really had any business going. That said, man, I just felt like people were they're on just another planet with this stuff. And even Miguel Andujar. It's just calm down a bit. Like the guy can't play first base, not in the bigs. You don't want that. You just don't. He'd be a DH if anything, and then you're blowing a 40-man spot for what?
I
I
think
think it's a waste of time to even think about.
Well, I just think that, like, on the list of concerns and issues and problems, it's down far. And so, what I would like to see is just, hey, just give me a stable lineup the last however many games we've got. Let certain tandems play. Find out as much as you possibly can about who you already have. We're running out of time before we get to next year and before the off season comes. So can we just please focus on that? That's what I want to see.
Yeah, it's like we said a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Vinny Capra. It's at this point, if you're not answering questions, I'm not interested. I want you to answer things for next year.
Yeah, it goes back to that. You're still trying to sort some things out, and all that to me just gets in the way of it and muddles what's already fairly muddled to an extent.
Totally. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm gonna shock you guys with a statement. I think, unless you've been watching me on Locked On all week, because I've already said it there, but I'm gonna say it here again.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Jim, I promised shock and awe.
Shock
And
away.
awe. So I'm going to say some words you don't hear here in Pittsburgh very often. And even if the team doesn't recognize them and act as such, the rebuild is over, my friend. The rebuild is over. The time period of bringing in prospects for veteran talent and trying to bolster up your farm system and get some talent up to the big leagues from that fountain of youth is over. It is now time to build on what you have rebuilt. We're entering a new phase this offseason. And I think we should recognize that, call this a line in the sand. This is where the rebuild ends. Now it's time to build on top of it. How do you avoid fool's gold, Jim? Because for me, that's what somebody like Andre Jackson has a huge chance to be. And what I mean by that is not that he is a bad player, not that he can't make it, not that he can't factor in next year, not that he can't carry starts, not even that he can't win the position. But in the offseason, a guy like Andre Jackson who finishes strong like he looks like he's poised to can often fool a team into thinking that they don't need to go out and get something that they really desperately do need to get.
You
I think
know,
that for this team to build now, they have got to make decisions that are painful like that.
it's so funny you bring this up, Gary, because we've both been very busy this week. We haven't talked much at all.
Nah.
I was watching Jackson's last start, and that thought was creeping into my head as he was pitching, because to his credit, he's looked pretty darn good.
Sure.
And I think most people would say he surprised them by, he goes out there with a purpose. He pitches well, he pitches smart, he's got good movement, all that stuff. That being said, my fear when I was watching it was, oh my goodness, if he plays well and pitches well this last month of the season, is this organization stupid enough to take that and say, okay, we've got another piece. We don't have to make a move right here. We've got something. And there's just a good chance that he regresses and is not capable of doing this long term. I hope he does. But man, I hope they're not thinking that. But you've got to worry about it a little bit.
It scares me to death, man. And it's not just him. I'm using him as an example because he's the latest flavor of the week, basically, that has, to his credit, as you already mentioned, pitched very well. I think he has a chance to make a difference here. I really do. But to me, now that the rebuild is over, Jim, because the rebuild is over, it's time for the build. So when you show up for the build, you don't build a rotation or a roster on hopes and dreams. You build a roster on things that you feel have a very solid chance of contributing and being part of winning that year. So to me, I don't look at any parts of the rotation besides Mitch Keller and Johan Oviedo as guys that I am writing into my starting rotation next year.
Yeah, if you want to keep him in the mix and say, okay, he finished strong, he might be a very valuable piece of an actual whole pitching staff that you could find a place for a guy like that. Does that happen around baseball? Absolutely. We even find people like that. So that's not uncommon. It's just you can't possibly start looking at him as any kind of certain piece.
For that matter, you can't look at somebody like Paul Skeens like that.
No.
That's how deep I'm talking about here. I don't even want like somebody that I consider to legitimately have a claim to be in the rotation next year. I don't want to go into it with that even as a lock that it's going to happen. I want them to fill this rotation. I want them to put two new pieces in there that we feel really good about and either force them to get beaten by pitchers that are just overwhelmingly looking like they need to be here. Paul Skeens comes to mind, or Jared Jones, or Anthony Solometo. But I don't want to go into the season going, why do we need to get anybody? We're going to have Jones and Solometo and Skeens, right? Because that's rebuild.
Yeah.
That's not build theory.
Or that you can somehow piece together the opener thing uh, more than what you're doing in the short term. That part would even worry me is like they have a great month of just doing this and thinking, well, we'll supplement it that way if we need to.
Yeah.
Man, you gotta you you gotta get serious about it. And I just, that's the big question. Everybody doubts, everybody wonders. People are skeptical about it. I pointed to this off season as, TikTok. It's time.
Yeah. And I think that, to me, that's why I want to make such a big point of moving out of this, what people see as never ending rebuild, because to me the rebuild ends once you have done what you set forth to do. You brought in young talent, and you've brought up enough of that young talent that most of your roster is now made of it. Of course, they have to develop and grow here at the league level. But when we talk about augmenting that team, I just don't want to stop short. I don't want to go, oh, well, the outfield's fine. You know, Josh Palacios did a great job this year. Nah,
Yeah,
I don't want to
yeah.
hear that. Now, somebody like Connor Joe did a good job, but I don't want to think that he's okay to cover first base on his own. I certainly don't want to see his name on the opening day lineup card for first base.
hmm
That's what
I
I
think,
mean by don't stop short, don't get sold for fool's gold. Make sure that you're actually going out and trying to build this team now.
and yeah, and I think what you end up seeing among the fan base, and some of it is the bar has been so lowered
Mm-hmm.
that all of a sudden people are still saying things like that, which is, hey, Josh Palacios isn't great, but he's okay as my fourth outfielder. And I'm thinking, no, like we can't do that. Like we've got to make upgrades. And I think you'll see the Connor Joe and platooning him and getting somebody else in there at first base. To me, it's just we have to start raising the bar. Will they do it? No. But should they be called out on it if they're not doing it? And should we be telling people exactly what they should be doing or what we think they should be doing? Absolutely. It's time to not settle for that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah, and I think there's a line of sanity out there. Where I'm going to be mad if they don't go and get somebody like Pete Alonso, versus I'll be mad if they think that it's okay to just keep Rivas and Joe. There's an in between there.
Yeah, you're
Like,
right. You're not saying Blake Snell and Pete Alonso.
right.
Um,
I could.
you could.
They have the money. Those might help more than anything else. But I just think what's important is to understand that you don't go into a season, in my mind, with two starters you feel really good about and three question mark slots
Yeah.
that could be filled by very competent players. I want to see Jared Jones. So, I mean, I feel like I have to reinforce this so people don't think I'm prospect hating. It's not that. It's that I don't want to go in and go, well, we're going to have Mike Burrows this year. And then, oh, no, we don't.
Right.
And I don't want to go in and go, well, Quinn Priester will figure it out over the. I don't want to count on that. I want to make him force his way onto the team.
And
That's
what I would challenge people to do is, we're coming up on there's a lot of close races. Playoffs aren't far away. When you sit there and you talk about the Pirates and you want to make certain assessments of where they are or somebody's just fine or whatever, watch some of these teams that once we get to the postseason, and then ask yourself if those guys are fine if you ever want to be able to play with the teams you're watching.
Right.
And the answer to that is most likely going to be no. There has to be improvement. So again, I talk about this all the time. Getting outside of that Pittsburgh Pirate bubble that we all tend to get into, but I think some people are just that's what they pay attention to and whatever.
Right.
You got to look around, man. You got to look at rosters and you got to look at the things that when you're watching a game and they've got pitching and they've got guys on the bench. Do you think the guys that we're talking about or that people are saying, oh, he's good enough, he'll be fine? Are they? Probably not.
Right. I mean, I think there's that. And then there's the fear of asking for things that actually might help. You know, I think a lot of people sell themselves on being okay with just seeing what a bunch of kids end up doing once you get to a certain point because they've been let down so much and they don't want to be wrong and they don't want to look silly and they don't want to go out there and make suggestions that everyone's going to laugh at them for. I get that. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just saying, look at the team, understand that we are now in a different time frame. That's all.
Yeah.
I know a lot of you wanted it to be this year. It wasn't going to be this year. I told you it wasn't going to be this year. I'm not going to rehash that stuff, but we knew it wasn't going to be, Jim. We said it back when they were 20-8. We said this is not the year yet. You can tell. It just isn't there. The pitching staff wasn't set up to last the season. Back then, you and I were both very worried that Rich Hill would even go another 9 weeks. So we knew this was not going to happen. At the same time, we did think there was reinforcements coming. Turns out, well, 2 guys we really counted on, well, they took big step back this year. Ortiz and Contreras. That screwed a lot of things up. I think if they had looked like horses, we'd be having a completely different conversation. It would be a no-doubter that next year they're going to be in it.
It's all it takes is Roansy, Ortiz, and Burrows' situation. That's all it takes for a team that's operating with a very thin margin of error to begin with. And I want to go back to one other point too, and you mentioned this, and I think people just have to look. Just get over it. People are going to suggest things on Twitter. Doesn't mean they think they're going to do these things. It means that they should do them. There's a big
some
distinction.
Of them anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a big distinction there. And sometimes you just have to be able to tell people, hey, clown, I'm not saying they're going to do any of this, but this is the bar that they should be shooting for. Right. And it's okay to talk about both. And I think people get mocked and ridiculed for that. And the fact of the matter is, say what's on your mind. It's, as long as you keep it somewhere within the stratosphere of reality, I don't have an issue with it.
No, I don't either. But I think it's time to challenge the team a little bit more next year.
For sure.
I'm not going to sit around and just pretend that I'm happy with status quo. There's time for seeing what you have. There's time for evaluation. There's time for development. That stuff's all going to happen anyway. No matter what they come out of spring with, those kids are going to end up playing if they're worth their salt. If Nick Gonzalez is good, don't worry about him being blocked. He'll make that block go away if he performs the way he should.
And all you have to do is look. And the reason that time is now ticking, Reynolds is under contract. Mm-hmm. Hayes is under contract. They probably are going to try to get Keller re-signed. We'll see how that goes. You've now called up other guys where the clock has started to tick. It's here. It's just, what are you going to do with it now that it's here?
Yeah, there's no turning back. They went with a youth movement this year. That, again, I hate to just sound like a broken record. That ends the rebuild. Sorry, it does. The clock has started on way too many of these prospects for you not to say it starts. Just because the pitching didn't time up with it doesn't mean that it didn't start. It did.
Yep. And go back to the whole thing as when all this, regime changed, and we talked about the whole issue of the term appropriate that I have from the very beginning, which is in the eye of the beholder, which is Bob Nutting and his underlings, which is that they would spend when the time was appropriate. Well, they can decide whatever that is, but I think to me and you that's pretty clear that it's got to start happening this offseason.
Yeah, and I think to a degree, bro, they spent this last offseason.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
No.
Again,
I'm not saying you are. I'm saying we have
levels.
We have a realization here. Okay, this is already a little different. They knew they weren't ready. They still spent some money. You know, they spent $8 million on Rich Hill. So my point is, it shouldn't be that out of the realm of possibility that they might spend 12 to 14 to bring in Jack Flaherty for a few years. You know what I mean? These are reasonable asks when you're at this point. And it's their own fault, their own doing, that they don't have more pitchers that you could put in pen for next year. They have Keller and Oviedo. And I got to be honest, on a lot of teams, Oviedo would still be a question. Think about it. The Yankees can barely muster using Luis Severino all year. And he's probably got a better track record than Oviedo does.
Yeah, I mean, Oviedo is somebody that I think both me and you from the beginning thought that there might be a little something there.
Yeah.
And I think over the season, he's proven that he's plenty capable.
Yep.
A whole year under his belt doing it. If nothing else, he's a back end of the rotation innings eater that can go out there on certain nights and be lights out. But again, are you ready to just say he's totally without worry that, I mean,
how could you after what you've seen happen to Rowanzi?
Yeah.
My point for bringing up Oviedo in that light is to say, I'm already being generous by giving you Oviedo. I'm already being generous with my own standards here to tell you Oviedo is in it. So don't stretch it. That's what I'm saying. Don't BS a BSer. Don't sell me Andre Jackson next year in spring training as a ready-made starter. I don't want that. I want him to have a chance to earn it. I want him to have a chance to maybe not make it and wind up in long relief and then work his way back into it, or go to AAA and earn it. But don't make that like the default now. Don't buy into 3 or 4 weeks of Ortiz and expect that next year he's going to come in shape and ready to go. And
no, dude, listen, throughout this whole thing, as much as the hitting has struggled at times, I've always been more worried about the pitching, because I just feel like you can get by a little bit without hitting if you've got a good enough pitching staff to do it. I don't know that it works in reverse, in my opinion.
Right.
At some point you have to be able to get guys out.
Yeah. And you'd love to sign a guy. Like we talked about Flaherty. I'm thinking like 2-3 years with him. Pick a guy, Lorenzen. Say you get Lorenzen for a year for $10 million. You want Contreras to kick his butt. That's what you want. Then you can trade him if you like, because he got beaten out. It's a different conversation.
And maybe that's and you brought up Ortiz several times here because of the rumblings that maybe he's not the hardest working guy in the room. Well, you know what? You have to find out about that. If he's just not committed fully, then figure it out pretty quick, because that tends to he He ain't got that stuff like that to get by on a guy that's not really, going to be fully committed. And on top of it, if you bring in other people to push him, maybe that's what he needs.
Maybe.
Maybe he's not a guy that you just can hand it to and say, he'll figure it out. He's got good stuff.
Yeah. That said, while I want them to go out and fill that stuff, I don't want to forget about these prospects. Like Quinn Priester right now is down in AAA, spinning everything he throws and using his superior wicked breaking stuff to strike out guys left and right in AAA to get himself out of trouble and rack up decent numbers and have Yinzers droll because they think he's ready now because they're not watching the games. They're seeing a box score that says Quinn Priester did good. The Pirates need to challenge Quinn Priester to improve on what he needs to improve on, and that is his fastball and his fastball command and his fastball deception.
Yep.
And if they're not going to do that, they're wasting a talent down there. That's all I'm saying. Just because you fill this roster, which they appropriately should, doesn't mean that you stop trying to train these guys. You should be constantly training the next guys. Do you think WWE just has their stars and they sit around? Or do you think they got guys off on another side ring they're trying to drum up a gimmick for and get them ready to take into prime time and take down one of these old guys?
Well,
That's what you want to happen.
Yeah, you're right about this. If you go down there and you just start relying on what worked before at that level, you're probably going to have success again. They should be beating that into someone like Priester, and I hope that they are, which is, man, you've got to improve on this. This is probably good enough, but without this, it's probably not going to work, man. We've already seen that. You've already seen it.
Yep.
And it's not, and Gary too, like, sometimes people get very mad when you start talking about a prospect poorly.
Yep.
It's not that we don't think that there's anything there. It's just that you can't count on it. It's not that you're disregarding them, but with
you can't ignore the flaming red warts either.
Right. And you just can't, you don't dismiss prospects just because they're prospects. You just can't count on them. And if you've been around the Pirates long enough, and I don't know if this is a recent thing with this new rebuild and a lot of the younger crowd, man, if you count on prospects and you're already banking on them, you're going to have a long, miserable life because most of them aren't going to work out.
And I would say right now, I totally agree with you. In 2020, not so much. In 2020, yeah, kick the tires on whoever you want. Whatever. I get it. Your core isn't here. You don't have all these kids up here. It's going to eventually have to be kids up here. Why not these kids? Right?
Right.
And then 2021, better kids, maybe. Here's a couple better kids coming in. Okay, maybe. Now we're getting into the point where, I'm sorry, I want my AAA team to be poised to win a championship down there. Because they're all blocked up.
You better see a lot of killers.
Yeah. That's got to be the goal. And then you have a phenom maybe just shoot up like Skeens, and he gets to skip all that. Fine. But don't count on it. That's all I'm saying. Don't buy fool's gold, Ben Cherington. Don't do it.
I don't think, I would find it hard to believe that Cherington sits here today as we sit here today and he looks around and thinks it's enough. He can't. He can't possibly. He cannot possibly. And if you look at what other teams, either that are established or organizations that are coming on right now hard and fast, you cannot possibly compare it and say, no, I think we're okay. We're just going to stay the course.
Yeah, that's got to be over now, man. That's just all there is to it. It has to be over. You want guys like Bailey Falter and Jackson Wolf and Andre Jackson to a degree. You want those guys replacing Cam Aldred. and your Cam Views of the world back in the day, and your Cody Boltons. You're upgrading your depth with guys like that and hoping that they become more than depth one day. But again, not counting on it. That's the distinction that has to happen this offseason as we transition from rebuild to build. That's all.
That's why I kept saying this offseason to me is so crucial in seeing what the mindset is.
Yeah.
And I obviously I want to watch more baseball, but I'm also just, man, Gary, I think me and you could have a really interesting offseason, which could tend to be a downtime.
Yeah.
But we're going to have something to talk about one way or the other. That's for sure. It's either going to be positive or it's going to be like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Right. And let's talk to Rob E here. He says, would the Cardinals rather have Jack Flaherty or Johan Oviedo moving forward? Well, Rob, they'll have neither because Flaherty is in Baltimore and the Cardinals move on from guys when they're ready to move on from guys. Not when they just feel like it. they're done with him. And Johan Oviedo, I'm sure they wish they didn't move him, quite honestly. But you're going to do that sometimes, and Quintana helped them get into the playoffs.
Yeah,
So-
that's just it. Like, you have to look at the situation of, yeah, in a perfect world, would they probably have liked to kept Oviedo around? Yeah, absolutely, but they
Right.
were trying to win. So, that's the point you want to be able to get to, where
Right.
you have a guy like Oviedo and you can say, now, they're paying for it this year, but do we expect that to last? I don't. I think that
Nah.
they'll recover. But
And, like,
those are the guys you want to have.
As far as Flaherty not being good since 2019, you're absolutely right. But I think Oscar Marin has had a lot of success with veteran pitchers, tweaking them a little bit and getting them where he wants them to be. And one thing Flaherty has never stopped doing is eating innings. And I love the idea of having that. And again, I eventually want him beaten. I want somebody to turn him into Steven Metz. I want somebody to push him out of the way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, hey, let's take another break, Jim. And when we come back, let's talk a little bit about where we are record-wise, where we're going, and, some interesting scenarios for how that could shake out here. Like, it's pretty safe to say we're going to have a better record this year. How much better?
Are we going to talk about your poll, or no? Are we leaving that off this week?
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit, and we'll probably talk about the RSNs a little bit and things like that too.
Okay, sounds good.
It has to sound good because I'm right about to push the button.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, we're back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Again, just want to remind everybody that all the content is free now on DK Pittsburgh Sports, so definitely head over there. Ton of pit coverage coming your way with my man Corey, who I do the H2P podcast with. We're trying to do that every Wednesday night now, so get a little more consistent with it.
Yeah, well, hey, football's cranking up here, and I am excited for Pitt. And we got a lot of rivalry games coming up with Penn State, West Virginia, Pitt, West Virginia. You guys are going to have a lot to talk about.
Absolutely, man. So, hey, hit subscribe, follow, like this show, do all kinds of cool stuff for us on Apple Podcasts, and be neat to us, and we'll keep putting out as much content as we can. So, Jim, we have 28 games left.
Mm-hmm.
One more, and they tie last season's win total. I like to think they're going to get that this weekend at least. So
it'd be nice to go into those tougher, that 6-7 game stretch against the Brewers and Braves with a little momentum for sure.
Right. And again, as bad as things have looked at the starting rotation and some some players that have really, really struggled. Last 40 games, somehow, some way, they squeaked out a 500 record. Not bad. They have to go 9-19 to hit 70 wins. That sounds doable to me. How about you?
I would think that would be disappointing to finish 9-19.
I would think so too. But I'm saying, like, from an overall record standpoint, that's 70, which I think was a minimum plateau that you and I pointed out at the beginning of the season. I mean, I believe I said 74 wins or 75. One of those two is the one I predicted.
Yeah, I got to go back and look too, because everyone's talking about their predictions, and I'm like, I don't remember mine.
Oh, dude, I'm even worse than you because I wrote it somewhere.
Okay, well,
so it's somewhere.
Yeah.
But
I think I said 73, but yeah. I'll go look.
So if they get to that point, it's going to be real hard for me to be mad about it. They kind of did what I said, right? And I think next year 500 is bare minimum, and they should challenge for a wild card. So far, I'd have to say, even if it doesn't look the way I wanted it to, it's on track. You know?
It certainly played out weirdly, you know, how it all would happen. But I think if you would have posed it to most rational fans, just that were looking at 2024 realistically, I think if someone would have said, hey, if they were 74 or 75 and 87 or 86, somewhere in there, would you be encouraged by that? I think most people would say yes. You're always going to have people say, no, that's just not good enough. Okay, it's not. But would you be encouraged by it? I think most people would have said yes. It just played out very strangely how it happened.
In the 20-8, I think, you know, probably drew in some eyes that would have just averted the entire season had they not done that. That said, it's part of the entire story, and you can't flush that any more than you can flush 500 in the last 40 games, any more than you can flush these last 28 games,
right?
Whatever they are.
Teams, you know, if you look at teams throughout the season, it's a long damn season,
right?
You typically have them, if you've had a decent season, you've typically had a month that probably carried you a little bit. So ours came.
The Dodgers are having one right now.
Yeah, well, the Dodgers seem to have more of them than most. But no, I just think that, like, you're right. Like, they all do count to some extent.
Yeah, like the Phillies are having one right now. They're on one of the hotter streets. They just set a Major League Baseball record for home runs in the month of August. I mean, Philadelphia is coming on at the right time, just like they did last year, which is kind of a skill set in and of itself, isn't it?
Sure. Look at the Mariners.
The Twins are hot. The Mariners are hot. And then some teams that really, really tried to make a move just cratered. Absolutely cratered. Like the Pirates, good shot to finish with a better record than the Padres. And the Padres didn't sell off.
I saw the Padres. We've talked about this before. Did you see their record in one-run games and extra inning games this year?
No.
I think they're 0-11 in extra inning games and like horrifically bad in one-run games. It is the difference. It is the difference all day long in baseball is how do you win close games?
Yeah, they've been a hard team to figure all year because I've never had my team line up against them this year and felt like the Pirates had a claim to that game. And I don't care if Keller was starting. I don't care who was starting. I never felt like in a good place for that game. And they've just whipped their butts. Like I think what you and I said a while ago, like Kim should never look like the most impressive player on that team. But he does. Never. And it just speaks to want to, man. It's a poorly constructed team. That's the best way I can put it.
Well, we've seen that, and you see it every year, is where you compile talent.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily always translate. Now, would I like to be in a position where I, as a fan of my team, if we compiled talent and it doesn't work right? Yeah, because at least it means you're out there trying to make the effort to do it. So,
Let's see. Thoughts on why we stink in extra innings. I think we stink in extra innings because we are exceptionally stubborn and bad about playing small ball. And in extra innings under Rob Manfred and his ghost runner system, if you don't know how to move a runner over every time from second base, you are not going to score that one run that you have to score. You
yeah.
can't have an inning go by where you don't put in that one guy.
And
You
teams
have to
aren't
do
really
it.
and teams are playing right away to try to win it. So like there's not going to be any 13, 14, 15 inning games. You don't have the pitching for it anymore. You haven't set up the game that way anymore. Like as you're playing that particular game with pinch hitting and available guys out of the pen and whatever. So you better figure out a way to win it right away. And yeah, you can use your closer in the 9th or the 10th or however you want to try to do it. But you're right, Gary. It comes down to, can you situationally get that run in a variety of ways? And the
Right.
Pirates have just been piss poor at it.
They really
have.
And these things have a tendency to even out too. They'll come up with a way like where somebody becomes a good bunter. And that's a bench player probably. Like Alika Williams comes to mind. He's a guy that could sit on your bench most of the time. He's your Rafael Belliard. He's your, whoever was backing up Jordy Mercer there for a while. And he comes off the bench and he can bunt on occasion in extra innings if that's what you want to do. But the real thing they need to work on is something that a hitting coach would have to instruct. So, not to rehash, but we'll move on from that. Speaking of winning, this whole regional sports network thing, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
So the Penguins, I guess, are just camping on with FSG, which fine. I think we knew that was going to happen. And they're going to have they're basically taking over AT&T Sportsnet. The Pirates, they haven't decided yet what they're doing. Their options are to either camp on with the Penguins and take whatever that offer would be, which I would imagine would be less than what they're getting now, but they don't get nearly as much as people think in the first place. And they could go with MLB, have MLB pay 80%, but I'm not sure how long that really could last. In fact, I think that would probably end at the next CBA. I've complained about a lot of things about Bob Nutting, but one of the things that I complain about most, Jim, is that he's not a good businessman. I talked about how he doesn't build around the stadium, and they're just starting to do that now. They don't own any of their parking. I don't see that being fixed anytime soon. So there's a lot of revenue streams they miss out on. To me, selling their rights for TV coverage back to MLB would be a poor business decision. I would prefer seeing the Pirates keep their rights, produce their own games, find their own cable network or channel locally to cover those games and control that a little bit. And ultimately, I think come out on top. Because the Yes Network isn't going away, and they will lose that CBA battle.
It's very hard to know exactly what's coming down the road. And how badly they lose it, if there are any gains to be made there. I think baseball's got a big problem here. It's not just the Pirates that are dealing with it, and there may be more coming. So it's just so hard for me to know which way it's going to go when that CBA is how many years down the road still?
Not as long as you think. 2027, brother.
No, but yeah, but
they'll be posturing for it next year.
But if you're entering into some type of long-term deal, man, I think baseball knows it's got a big problem coming, but I don't know that anyone knows how to fix this.
Nope. I agree with you. That's why I think I would probably rather control my own destiny if I were Bob Nutting. You know, invest some money in doing this right. Buy what you need to buy from AT&T Sportsnet as far as equipment and personnel goes, and start something yourself. That seems to me the best course of action if you really want to like make something of it. Because again, I don't know how a sports league is going to force somebody like the Yes Network to shut their doors. They're making money. They're doing well. You know, FS FSG's got a successful partnership with the Red Sox and everything. They're doing fine owning their own. So I think like to me, camp on with the Penguins and continue to get the draw from them that you've gotten for years on whatever they call it. I forget. I think they already named it, but Sportsnet
Pittsburgh,
Pit or something,
Pittsburgh Sportsnet or Sportsnet
something like that. Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
camp on with them or go it alone. But I really don't like the idea of casting your lot with MLB, if only because I think it goes away in a couple of years.
You don't know what's going to come of that. And, um, you know, 80% of what you were previously getting, that doesn't thrill me. It's not great timing. I can say that much for the Pirates. I don't know. I don't know how that reverberates through upstairs for them, but
It shouldn't at all yet. We're not to that point.
it shouldn't.
If their
But
payroll was right now like 130 million, I would tell you to probably look for some cuts. They're not anywhere near where
no,
this
they're
is a
not.
concern yet. So I guess like this was a topic like you and I kind of talked about. Do we even want to discuss it? Because we're really not going to have an answer here.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is we're going to have to wait and see. It's one of the questions I get asked the most. Like, where am I going to be able to find the Pirates? All I can really tell you is the same thing I could have told you 6 months ago. What next April, you are going to turn on a TV channel and the
Yeah.
Pirates are going to be on it. And I don't know how that's going to come to be, but it
No,
will.
it will. They're not. It's not going to get to that point. They'll figure out a way to make some money off of it. It's just bigger picture, storm clouds ahead. This
For the
affects
game, I think, though. Yeah. For the
yeah,
game more than the Pirates.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, for the game, and
I did say a long time ago that this issue, Jim, would be what drives this league towards a salary cap. Because what's prevented it is the local TV money. And now that the local TV money is going away and or conglomerating, you will be left with stations like the Yes Network, and the Dodgers have their own situation going on, and Boston has one, and there's a couple others out there. But for the most part, they're all regional sports networks on cable, and they're all threatened or endangered species. They're all going to go away. Now, once all that stuff conglomerates into Major League Baseball, well, now there's no strategic advantage from TV money anymore. Now it literally is just market size, right? And real market size.
right.
That's the perfect open door for everybody to come together and realize, hey, we can make more money if we all row in the same direction than we can if we don't.
Or if you get enough teams hurting in the short term to start building that pressure that I don't think is there yet, and nobody is willing to have a knife fight in the mud yet. But eventually that's going to happen. It's going to affect enough teams where the few that don't want to change it anymore, they should feel that they are in trouble. That may be a while down the road, but
there's a few, but there aren't 8. You got to have 8 to stop anything. So that's why I think like come 2027, enough of these teams and networks are going to be in trouble, and enough of them will have taken MLB's Kool-Aid, and that in and of itself, that 80% figure is going to get threatened. I think you'll see that's something that they can potentially come around and at least it's going to be a real fight this time.
It almost would have to be, because then people look. That's when it gets really nasty, really nasty. You're talking about a lot of money on the table that should be there or is available. Some people don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
The haves and the have-nots. I mean, and it's going to widen a little bit here short term at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So that's all I got on the regional sports networks. I wish I had more answers. I just don't.
Yeah, it's just, we talked about it. It's just, to me, it's something we're going to have to keep an eye on, and it's going to affect everybody, not just Pittsburgh. So as a baseball fan, keep an eye on it. We'll see how the Pirates go. I tend to think they are going to go the MLB route, but
I think they will too, Jim. And the sad reason is I think it's because it's the easiest.
Well, I wish there was a way for them to. I hope they're not thinking too short term, but that's easy.
Who knows what the commissioner's selling them to? The Padres sure made that deal quickly, and I do consider them to be very smart at the outside investments. They've built up their area around the stadium really well. They own almost 100% of the parking. They rake in money left and right from all those entities and business ventures they've taken out there. It's actually why they've been able to outspend their market size, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
They're good business people. And they handed over the keys to the kingdom to Major League Baseball in a country second. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe that's because they got caught flat-footed, and maybe that's just Major League Baseball helping them out the rest of the season, and next year they'll figure something out on their own. I don't even know if that's how it works. Maybe they'll let you back out. I don't know.
Right.
So, I mean, there's an awful lot that I just am unclear, and it's not for lack of trying, man. I've read just about everything there is. Heck, I even got a trial to The Athletic to read a story.
Oh,
and I don't want to read The Athletic. I did. You know what I mean? I could have done something dangerous, like saw a Mark Caboli piece or something.
Well, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. It'll just be interesting because, I want to see what happens to salaries too over these next 3 or 4 years. Where is that at? Was that enough to get the players' attention? What are they what's gonna happen with the players' union if that's not escalating like they think it should? But there are teams that are starting to get affected by this. Just, man, it's gonna be fascinating and infuriating, but there's so many levels to this that are yet to play out.
Dude, one of the coolest stories to watch next year, I think, in this offseason in particular, is going to be, did the Mets and Padres teach anybody a lesson about spending a ton of money on aging and older free agents and expecting them to contribute the way they did when they were 30?
I think there's always going to be a guy out there that buys a team or gets a wild hair up his ass and thinks that he can do it. But yes, cautionary tales.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think probably one of the hotter free agents on the market is going to be Cody Bellinger. And I don't think he'll sign with the Cubs, although I think he should, because that ballpark plays perfectly for him, whether he knows it or not. I mean, it's a perfect ballpark for Cody Bellinger. And there's the perfect amount of pressure, too, playing for the Cubs there for him. What I could see him going back to an LA team or New York and everything kind of hitting the fan for him again. So,
he's a fascinating contract to watch over the offseason.
He really is. He's going to be a bellwether.
Yes, because of the downs that he has had, but this year, how well he's played. He's a free agent. He's a Scott Boras client, so you already know he's going to be asking for 10 years. And the ask price is going to be astronomical. What are teams willing to pay him? Gary, did you see how many RBIs he has in August?
No, I didn't.
31.
Wow. That's almost as good as Brian has been.
You want to talk
I'm
about
kidding.
playing it right though, from
Yeah,
so yeah. So
it's going to be an interesting offseason. We have a long way to go yet. 28 games left. Enjoy them because you will miss baseball, as Jim and I said at the very beginning of the show. You will miss it, and this is fun. Watch the kids, man. Like a lot of them. Henry Davis is going to come back real soon here from the IL, I'm sure. And I know they're starting to actually show us O'Neill Cruz doing some stuff now, Jim. So I wouldn't be shocked if we get a week or two here at some point. The way they got him running with resistant bands and stuff like in the bullpen.
yeah, yeah, and
So
I mean, maybe Nick Gonzalez, you might see him again.
you could see
I
Jared Triolo again. I think you'll probably see Rowanzi here again and Quinn Priester again. So you're going to get a good taste of some more youth here and plenty of opportunity for anybody to become that fool's gold that I fear so much. But just
Yeah,
know the difference. Know the difference between fool's gold and a prospect that is ready for a real opportunity. That's all.
fans need to know the difference. The Pirates need to know the difference. More importantly,
Yeah. And that's the thing we can't diagnose. We're going to
nope.
find out this offseason. That's why it's going to be great. And Jim, we suffered for a while to get here. So let's enjoy it, man. And
Yeah,
let's have fun with it.
yeah. I look, as you go down through this last month here of September. Um, Let's see how Cabrian finishes out the season. Let's see how Reynolds finishes out. We might get Cruz, like you said, for a little peak. You're going to get a look at some guys coming back up that maybe it didn't go so well the first time. So there's plenty here to. Let's see how Oviedo finishes out the year.
And they're
Sawinski,
largely playing good ball. So
yeah, and Sawinski too. I mean,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
so.
Jack is poised right now to just tear the Cardinals apart. He just hit a home run. Now he almost hit one the night before. You know as well as I do he's poised to go on one of those 5-6 home runs in a weekend type bender.
And if he does, I almost want, just for the sheer entertainment of it for the off season, for him to put together a scorching hot month of September, and then just the total mind f that will be for everybody the rest of
Absolutely.
the way.
Absolutely. I'll
So
tell you what, you would feel a lot better about the outfield though. If he and G1 Bay took off.
Bay's another one.
Yep. Yeah. There's a
So
lot of really interesting things to watch here yet, and we're going to talk about them all. But that's enough for today.
let's get out
So,
of here.
yeah, let's let our good friend Ben take it away like he always does. And I'll say it for you guys watching on video. Let's go, Bucks.